Hello, everybody. It's Phil and Pete, and we are back for yet another edition of our retro reviews. And we've been doing the X Files. And of course, with the X Files, we have two pit stops. One is their first movie, Fight the Future, and the second pit stop. And I'm happy to say pit stop because that means we have more seasons ahead. Is this movie, I Want to Believe, which before it was the end, we would have finished our podcast journey right here. Um, so this movie came out in 2008. Okay, it's directed by Chris Carter and written by him and Frank Sputnitz. And it's the second feature film installment in the X Files franchise. And it did not do very well at the box office, but we'll talk about that and a whole lot more tonight. So
It
thanks for
made
joining.
its money back.
Just barely. I mean, we'll look at the money side of this movie. But anyway, what's up, Peter? Say something to these beautiful people out there. By the way, like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be doing. I'm sorry, Pete. I introduced you and then cut you off, but it's
Yeah.
important. Those of us, those of you that dig the content, okay, Pete. These guys that dig the content, I'm going to send them over to a page here. And this page, oh, look at me. I really got to do this, Pete. I'm so sorry. Um, but I'm not finding their page all of a sudden. Okay, folks, Pete's going to introduce himself, and then when I get myself settled in, I'll let you know. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, folks out there, how you doing? We are almost at the end. We'll be bringing you a recap of Deep Space Nine very shortly. I just started it yesterday, but I did rewatch I Want to Believe last week because I thought we were going to do this podcast last week. So watched it twice in preparation for this podcast, so it would be reasonably fresh in my memory.
Aha, there you go. And guys, I'm terrible at remembering regular people's names, so I apologize to these fellas here at the Cult Lords, okay? And they gave us a really nice shout out on their page. They're a new channel, and they do a bunch of nerdy reviews. I see here The Matrix, The Protege, uh, top 8 movies. I think they do one on B movies, horror movies, and yeah, they're doing it up, man. They're doing it up. I appreciate these guys for just talking and talking and talking, and they got long form podcasts like ours. And sometimes it can be disheartening because you're like, who's listening? But you end up creating a little family. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller, but we always got our steady stream of listeners. So shout out to you guys, the listeners, but also shout out to these boys here from Cult Lords. Go over there, follow their channel, help their channel grow. It's got 160 subscribers. Let's get that up to 200 and more. And thanks, boys, for the shout out on our channel. Okay, so there you go, Pete. I got some business out the way, but they deserve it. They're doing good work. So back to this movie, 2008. Pete's the good synopsis guy, so he's gonna give you a little bit of a synopsis. Maybe we should do it like this, Pete. As we run through the synopsis, we can take little breaks and talk about how we feel about that part of the movie before we go into the movie as a whole. And be warned, folks, there will be spoilers. Duh. Okay.
Hmm.
2008 movie. So if you haven't seen this yet, turn off our channel now and come back later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that when this movie came out, I was living in China at the time, so I was completely unaware that it existed. But in China, we had these DVD markets you could go to where you could buy like DVDs for like 10 yuan. I mean, it was like $1.50 basically. So you go like every 2 weeks and you drop the equivalent of like $15 on like 20 movies, and you didn't even care if they worked, right? If they didn't work, you didn't take them back. You just threw them in the garbage because they cost nothing. And a lot of times they would be like movies that were still playing in the theaters too, and they would be actual DVD quality. And one day I was at the DVD market and I found this, and I was like, oh, no way. So yeah, I was pretty excited to see that they made another X Files movie. Wasn't what I expected, but overall, I felt like it was a second series finale and a better
Mhm.
one than the one that we had. As I said last podcast, I didn't hate the last one, but this felt a little better. So, um, like the first X Files movie, it doesn't begin with Mulder and Scully. It begins with like those little teaser intros that they had in the series. And in this case, it's like a bunch of FBI agents traipsing through the snow, which is a really good visual motif in this movie. I like the vast white landscapes that this movie shows.
Yes,
Yeah, feels very desolate.
that's
And some dude is leading them to something. We don't know what it is, but tell him to fucking dig it up, and it turns out to be a severed arm. So sorry, you're going to say something about the scenery?
no. I was just saying that that's a beautiful opening scene with that scenery, and they're all going
Yeah.
with the pickaxes and stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's great opening for any film, not just X Files. It's just very well filmed in the music and the tension of it. So I really like that opening scene. Puts you right in the movie.
Yeah, yeah, and of course the score is always spot on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So then we catch up with Scully. We haven't seen Scully now in 6 years. What she was actually going to do was kind of unclear in the season finale because she was still technically in the FBI, but it looked like she and Mulder were going to run off together. And we see now she's left the FBI and she's working in a Catholic hospital, doing what she always wanted to do, being a doctor. And she's working with this little boy who's got this like incurable brain disease, and the church is kind of trying to get rid of him. They're like, well, it's in God's hands now, so let's
Yes.
send him to a hospice. Basically, like he's dead, and it's gonna make us look bad, so let's just get rid of him.
He's got
And
Sandhoff disease.
yeah, yeah, I thought that was actually a made up disease, but I looked it up, and it's just so rare that it sounds made up.
Yep.
Yeah. So she's fighting for this kid, and she gets interrupted by a visit from the FBI who are looking for Mulder because they need his help with a case that has maybe some supernatural elements. She says she doesn't know where he is, but it turns out they've basically been living together this whole time. Like,
I know.
way to fucking hide out undercover. Like they're not living. He's not living at Scully's place. He's got his own little recluse place, but she obviously is still making regular booty calls. So Mulder's life as a fugitive has not been very inconspicuous. Um,
Man, I laugh when I see this because it's like this is like the shittiest X. Well, we've already established that this is a pretty low security grade FBI during the series with how many killings and car attacks
yeah,
have happened in their garage. But apparently, they're really bad at seeking too and searching for people.
yeah,
Mulder's like he's not really. He's at least just a drive away.
yeah, yeah,
From Scully. Like, I wonder where Mulder could be. Hey, why don't we tell Scully, like, just for one? What do you mean, tell Scully? No.
yeah. But they do kind of address that because basically, like the issue they put forward is like they're going to drop all the charges against Mulder, clear his name. If he gives them their help, they're going to forgive him. And Mulder's bitter. He's like, "Fuck, they should be forgiving me." And Scully does make the point. She's like, "I think they could have found you anytime they wanted to. They were just glad to have you gone." So they
Oh,
weren't really
yes.
looking for him. So that's why Mulder wasn't
Good
really hiding.
point. By the way,
So yeah.
oh, good that you brought that up. That's a good plot point. But one thing that also makes me laugh, though, is this guy. He's the FBI agent. And I remember him as this really bad 90s rapper, Exhibit. That's his
Yes,
name.
yes, I saw his name and I was like, oh, that must be a rap dude.
Yes, he wasn't my favorite, but he was pretty successful for a little bit. So it was funny to see him as an FBI agent when I first saw this movie in whenever I did see it. I was like, wait, I know that face. He does all right. He doesn't have the FBI style to him. It looks more like, maybe a security guard that just kind of
Yeah,
got a few promotions too many. But he does
yeah.
all right, man. These, well, not just the
He,
rap guys, but singers in general always want to break into the
he's
movies.
kind of a jerk too, and he did that well.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And kudos to Carter for getting us, a black dude in there. It's hard to come by. Um, Although, for all the racial sensitivities that this movie has, as we get going, man, Chris Carter and the trannies, man, Chris Carter and the trannies. I don't think this movie would do well if it was released today. But anyway, moving on. For other reasons, for other reasons.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, so basically, Mulder agrees to do it not because he's going to get his life back, but because Scully kind of appeals to his sense of FBI camaraderie. Because what they're looking for is, and they're looking for um, this woman. She's an FBI agent. She's disappeared, and she's one in many of a long line of women who have disappeared, and they're connected to this missing arm that was found in the snow. Why do they need Mulder's help? We get this at the FBI briefing. So they're back in the FBI briefing. Um, they're they're getting the lowdown from this FBI agent, Dakota Whitney, who's played by Amanda Peet. Who had,
I
yeah,
know, and that was kind of crazy to see her in there too.
yes. She didn't wind up sticking around the movies very long, but she had her
Yeah,
few years of
she
success.
was hot for a while.
Yes, she was. So yeah,
But
she gives the
we
briefing.
guys, we hot like she was successful. We're not a bunch of sex.
Yeah,
Although she was hot too.
yeah, she was. She's particularly hot in this, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, the deal is, why do they need Mulder? Because he's an expert in paranormal, and their main lead on this is the guy we saw in the opening scene digging up the arm. He's a former priest who has uh, apparently been seeing psychic visions of these women,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what led him to the severed arm. The FBI thinks he might be in on it. He's an accomplice and he's just jerking their chain. So they want Mulder basically to verify that he's the real deal or debunk him. But the catch is, he turns out to be a pedophile who was convicted of molesting or like raping 37 altar
I
boys.
know. So when you said that he was jerking their chain, I'm like, that's better than jerking some other stuff that he was doing a lot of.
Yeah. Well, I think Mulder made a joke about that too. He said something about like getting into bed with the guy, and then they told him that, and he makes this face like, "Oh, Mulder, that's bad face. Maybe I won't be getting into bed with him." Yeah. So they go to pay old Father Joe a visit, and Scully can't stand him. She's a devout Catholic. He's betrayed the faith, and she's working with a little kid right now, and she's just disgusted. She lets him have it. She gets in his face. She asks him all about, why are you praying for forgiveness? Do you think God would actually forgive what you did? And eventually, like, Father Joe is like, I can't work with her negative energy. She's got to get lost. So
Yes.
they take him out on a drive to help locate the the scene of the FBI agent's abduction, and they try to trick him, but he gets the right house. So eyebrows raised,
By the
and
way,
then
at this
yep.
point, Pete, is this when Scully drops, like she just says, I ain't doing this shit? When she goes back to the hospital?
No, she doesn't say. She gets told to leave. Actually,
Oh boy. Yeah, so this goes, let me just take a little pause because
yeah.
I read a lot of comments in the X Files groups and stuff like that. One comment somebody made, which I thought was interesting, is, and it goes back to Chris Carter not being the best writer for Scully. I don't know. He doesn't. He always seems to do something weird with her, and it's probably the reasons why she sometimes gets angry with the whole franchise. But yeah, somebody in the comments said something really interesting. Like, man, we have to wait so long to get an X Files movie, and then you separate Mulder and Scully through a big chunk of it, and
Yeah,
she's off, with her medical stuff, which is
she's not
this.
on the case at all.
No. And, and then somebody made that comment that, like, and it all started with this argument she has with this guy. For what reason? Like, she's a seasoned FBI agent. She should be accustomed to the fact that, I mean, she's dealt with the creepiest of creeps, from child murderers to rapists, cannibals. And
Hmm.
it's so out of character for her to just really go off on. I mean, we get that there's a religious angle, and Scully's supposedly this mega religious
And
lady.
she's working with a kid at the time too.
Okay, but okay, she's working at a kid's hospital, but it seemed very manufactured, and somebody wrote that in a comment and made me think it's like this manufactured argument just to get her off screen. And it's like, come on. I mean, we were looking to see Mulder and Scully, and then instead we get Mulder and Amanda Peet, which Julian is a very classy lady. But if I were her, I'd be like, fuck this. Okay, I get her boobs are, you know, tight or whatever, but I'm the star of this show. So I don't know. Sowing seeds of discontent I am in Gillian Anderson's relationship with the X Files, which will pop its ugly head up again when we start talking about season 10 and how the contract negotiations for that. So I don't know. I just wanted to make a comment on that, but more kind of just give voice to some of these people that write these comments, because it's kind of interesting take on this whole scene.
Right. Yeah, and there's more. We like Scully's story is kind of divested, but it has bearing as well. But yeah, Mulder gets most of the action until the end. Um, so yeah, at any rate, they he finds the house. So he kind of passes the test, and then he like runs off into the back and starts uh, crying tears of blood.
Yes.
So that's kind of a weird thing. So we get what Scully is
So
going. Yes, yes. Meantime, we actually see Scully back doing her thing with the kid. Turns out this is going to be a plot point,
weird.
and she advises stem cell therapy. This I actually thought was one of the more realistic things about the unrealistic things about the movie, because Americans don't do stem cell therapy, man. It's like religious dogma shit, using fetus parts and shit. But here, the church, the Catholic Church of all people, are like they're opposed to it, but they're gonna let her try it.
Mhm.
Yes.
But
So,
you know what?
uh,
You know what it was, Pete? Because the movie came out, 2008. We were still in the Bush years, more kind of.
right,
And there's a few call outs there to Bush. There's a picture
yeah,
of him on the wall, and I think they make a little joke about it. So, and Bush was the guy. I remember around this time is when they were having the debates about stem cell research. And Bush was adamantly against it for all the reasons that you stated. And I remember the big push that was for it was Ronald Reagan's son or daughter, I forgot, but one of these kids. And it made news because Ronald Reagan is the father of conservatism. But they're like, man, stem cell research could have like saved my father. Well, not saved his life, but maybe given him another 10, 20 years
yeah,
before he went all nutty with the dementia from Alzheimer's. So that's why it's shoehorned in there.
okay,
That was the topic of the time for all you youngins out there who don't know.
yeah, and everyone else does it now too.
Yes.
Yeah. So from there, we cut to this woman at a swimming pool who's being stalked by a guy who's watching her at the pool. And as she's driving off, he runs her off the road with a snowplow and kidnaps her. So we know right away this is the bad guy. So and he's claimed another victim. Then we get
They all got these what is it, Polish or Russian names? I wrote it down.
yeah, I think they're Russian.
What's his name? Let me see here. Let me see. I got both these guys, him and his husband, as we will get to later. His name is Dashium or something.
Yeah,
Dashishin?
they
Dashishin?
only mention their names once.
Yeah, Dashishin, something like that. Yeah, there's like
Yeah,
a FBI photo. I think I did. No, I thought I had. Well, I thought I had taken a screenshot of the cast list because it's difficult to remember these people's names. Well, okay, that's Dashishin that runs the lady. And man, what a cool scene! I like that scene in the swimming pool. It's creepy as hell.
yeah,
Uh, and you know, it pretty much it's every woman's greatest fear, I guess. You know, to be raped or um, be uh, hit, whatever, any type of
yeah,
aggression from a man. And I think they really nailed that as far as putting that tension. By the way, I was scrolling down here on the wiki page to kind of match where you are in the story. And then what do I see right in front of me? It says that after Drummy leaves, this is when Mulder first gets to the FBI, the pair waiting outside a conference room. They glance at a framed photograph of George W. Bush and another of J. Edgar Hoover. So, little visual cue there of how they feel about Bush. Go ahead,
yeah.
Pete.
Yeah, so then we actually get a nice little Mulder Scully moment. They're just chilling in bed, which is not something we got to see them do a lot of in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of filling each other in on their day. Scully talks a bit about what she's going through with this kid. She's thinking that she might be projecting the loss of William onto this kid and her maternal instincts. And then just impact. Looks like they're going to do it, but then Scully mentions the fact that they found like this animal tranquilizer in the arm, and it triggers something in Mulder, and he's like, "Okay, I'm on the case now. I'm 100% invested in this." So that's a nice little interlude scene they have there. And as it happens, they get a phone call. They get a phone call that there is a new lead.
And Mulder shaves, which is an
Mulder
important.
shaved, yes, because he's got a big old beard throughout this.
Now, look at this picture here, Pete. Is his hair weird to you? Do you think he's wearing a hairpiece through this movie? Because his hair was just too flowy, but it kind of was crooked on his head.
No, it doesn't look weird.
You think that was his real hair?
Yeah,
These are important things people need to know. I know Scully wore a wig for the revivals because she said she was tired. Gilliam said she was tired of dyeing her hair red. But I don't know, look like a hairpiece. But go ahead.
yeah. So Father Joe has had another vision, and this leads them to basically like a mass dumping ground of body parts.
Yep.
Now, for the I forget the name of the FBI agent who's played by the rapper dude, but as far as he's concerned, this is just more evidence that Father Joe is in on it. Dakota's kind of sitting on the fence, and Mulder is now actually starting to believe. He was pretty skeptical at the beginning, but he's starting to come over now, and that's like the main theme of the movie. It's the title. I want to believe. Because he can't really give them much information. He can just kind of lead them to clues that aren't really helping.
Yes, it's Agent Mosley exhibit.
Mosley, yes, yes,
Yes. And Bill Connolly plays Joseph Christman.
yes. All right. So gonna jump ahead a bit because there's a lot of Scully farting around in the hospital, and there's scenes of this kidnapped woman. They're actually worth talking about because they're kind of creepy scenes. We still don't really know what's going on, but we're starting to get a picture. She's like being kept in a box in
Hmm.
this like barn-like room, and there's a lot of people around talking European. They're wearing surgical masks. We're seeing medical equipment around. Just getting we're seeing basically what she sees, but she can see enough that she knows to be scared. So yeah, it's a creepy little interlude we get with her.
Yeah, it's very Chris Carter trying to do Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Girl trapped, can't really see what's going on, and weird folks doing weird things in lab coats. So pretty creepy, pretty creepy. I like it. I like that section.
Yes. In the meantime, though, Mulder's doing some detective work. They're still like digging up parts of bodies from like a dozen different bodies, and he observes that this missing FBI agent was wearing a medical bracelet, which like identifies body, blood type, and things like that. And so now he's got a couple clues to work on. He thinks like the victims are being abducted because of the medical bracelet, and they also go to act on the possible recent kidnapping. The woman who was abducted, her crashed car has been found. So they go to investigate that, and they piece together that she was at the pool, and her medical bracelet was what identified her and got her stopped. So
Mm.
Mulder's putting together a case now. Now, I want to point out that the original X Files movie had quite a bit of action. Up until this point, this movie has had really very little action.
Yeah.
It's had some suspense. It's had some creepy moments. It's had some good Mulder and Scully movies, but not a lot of action.
Yeah, the
Um,
basically the car
yeah,
being
yeah,
knocked off the road is the only piece of action in this movie up to this point. And you kind of got to get into that. We'll talk more about that at the end of this, but it's not Fight the Future for those that have never seen I
yeah.
Want to. And a lot of people skip this movie.
Yeah. So we get back to Scully. She's doing her STEM search thing. Mulder drops by to get her medical opinion on all his evidence. Like he's put shit together, but Scully is the scientist of the team, so he wants her medical opinion. And she tells him what the audience has probably already suspected, that they're going after them for their organs. So we're dealing with probably an organ harvesting ring now. So,
Yes.
okay.
By the way, Aaron Casey Smith in the X Files fans group said, I just watched this movie again last week and I really loved it because I posted
Hmm.
our video in a couple pages and I asked, what did you think of the movie? Did it age well? And another comment here by John Thompson from the Fright Day Community Center. He said, I'll have to watch again, but I remember being really agitated. And like Pete just said, there's a lot of suspense in this movie. Maybe not a lot of action, but it does kind of keep you guessing what's going on. Um, Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, well, we get a nice Mulder and Scully moment here where Scully kind of explains her reasons for not wanting to be involved in this. And she kind of tells Mulder to back off too. She's like, look, man, we've been down this road before. You get obsessive, it consumes you, you get headstrong, and you lose yourself to the darkness. That's a big theme in this movie, too. The quote
Mhm.
unquote darkness that was basically everything that made a mess of their lives in the original series. And she's like, I just want to be free of this, and you should too. But Mulder's already in, man. He's in with both feet. She can't talk him out of it, and she doesn't quite break up with him, but she tells him like, yeah, if you're getting back into this full swing, I can't come with you.
Yep, yep, yep. She said she even tells him he should just write his shit in a book. She's like
Yeah,
level, but yeah, she does say this. I'm not coming, which for me is a breakup. She's like, man, I've been following this dude for however long.
now it seems like they've had 7 good years though, or 6, I guess.
Yeah, but that's because he was not obsessed and compulsive and everything. And then she's just like, I can't do this, man. Like that was Scully of season five or whatever. I
Yeah,
can't be that Scully anymore. So I feel her. For me, it was her like giving him an ultimatum and being like, look, either you
yeah,
just move on and we go to phase whatever of our relationship, or I'm stepping out, I'm leaving. So good
yeah,
scene.
yeah. So yeah, then we get a scene with Scully and the kid's parents who say like, "No, we're not going to do stem cell therapy after all. We're going to put our faith in God," which is really disappointed. Which leads her to go back and see Father Joe because in their last meeting, he had told her not to give up, and she wasn't sure what he meant, and she thinks it might have something to do with her work with this kid. So
Mhm.
she's asking what he means. Right now, she's getting sucked into the psychic stuff, and he's really ambiguous. Um, and she when he can't give her any answers, she basically flat out calls him a charlatan. So, yeah, we get that little scene that does turn out to be relevant later in the movie, the whole don't give up thing.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, we have no X Files in this. That's another funny thing. It's called the X Files, but the X Files are dead. The investigative team is basically Mulder, Whitney, and Drummy, and Scully providing the occasional reluctant medical advice.
Yes.
Yes. So we get back to them, and thanks to the evidence, this is where the movie actually really starts to kick in and does get a little actiony. Um, Mulder's detective work is really what pays off. Like the psychic leads them to the dump site, but once they got that, between the medical bracelet and the drugs and whatnot, they are able to come up with a suspect who is this Russian dude who he works as an organ transporter, and they got his name, they got his place of work, and they they go to his employer, the Organ Donors Association or whatever, to get more information about this guy. And it just so happens that he's there when they arrive, but they just miss him. Uh, but Whitney and Mulder are waiting outside the building, and when he exits, they're they're having a good conversation. By the way, Whitney's basically decided that Father Joe is full of shit. He was probably in on it, and because sorry, I forgot to mention a very important clue that has led them to this. This organ donor dude with the complicated Russian name, it turns out he is married to a guy that was one of the altar boys that Father Joe molested.
Yes.
Now, to the FBI, this is
That's
proof.
complicated. But okay.
Yeah, this is proof that Father Joe was in on it. He's a fraud. This guy was an accomplice, right? He got like Stockholm syndrome or something, and they're
Mm.
all working together. For us longtime X Files viewers, we know, holy shit, this means Father Joe's for real because it's the X Files, and by molesting him, he has this like psychic connection where he has to make up for what he did by helping stop him from doing all these terrible things. So
Yep.
yes, this is the X Files supernatural part of it. It's the only part of it that's remotely supernatural.
Well,
But
no, but Father Christman is psychic, so I'll give him that. Like, okay, he was psychic, and then it just goes a little bit deeper of
well,
why.
he's psychic, but he's psychic for a very specific thing and very specific reason. It's not like he can pick lottery numbers or anything.
By the
He's
way, the husband's name is Tomachesis or something like that. So, man, oh man, they got these names out of it. By the way, when his husband, Dashashin, whatever, was running out the building, he had a cooler and he leaves it behind.
yes,
You open you open it up and there's just a head there, right?
yeah, it's the head of the FBI agent that they've been looking for. I think it's Drummy that opens the cooler because he drops the cooler and runs.
Mhm.
So then we get like a little bit of action, police action. Fleming and Mulder chase the plow driver into a construction site. It's very easy to access apparently, but it makes for a cool setting for a chase. And they get separated, and Mulder sees that the driver is coming for her. He's on an upper level. He can see her down below. She can't find him. And then he just appears in front of her and pushes her. And man, I don't know how they got that high up because the bitch falls for a long way. It's
Mhm.
like, it's never ending. I swear her fall is like 30 seconds of on screen time. And her
Yeah.
face, she looks pretty chill the whole time. They should do what they did with Alan Rickman and really drop him like they did in Die Hard, because that motherfucker looked scared when he fell. But she
Well, I
looks
mean,
pretty chill.
yeah, she looks pretty chill, but wasn't it like an actual? I think there was an actual fall or something like that that they did in Die Hard to like kind of.
Yeah, they did. They had like a mattress placed out like 20 stories below him, but they
Yes, but
actually did push him out a window.
exactly, like that wasn't scripted, So the look on his face is actually that. I guess he figured he would just fake the beginning of the fall and then they'd bring in a stunt double or something. But they got the look. And now this we can put in the speaking of the no X Files, but we have the what the F files, which for me is FBI. Okay, she's kind of a young FBI agent, but come on, how stupid can you be following this guy in the dark in this construction site, which has no guardrails, no railings, no nothing, and not only that, standing like right on the edge. Like, come on, and screaming, mother, mother. Okay, mother's up. He's in there somewhere. You don't gotta make noise and let the bad guy know exactly where your ass is, so he can push you
Mm,
off the edge, bitch. But yes, it's one of those kind of. I'll take care of you, and then the next second, the little boy, what's his name, little psychic boy gets stolen from right under their nose. Poor Scully. So yeah, something it happens to the best of them. So I guess Amanda Pete's time came. In a
yes, yes,
long,
and she was kind of a fangirl too. She was like the Lila of this. She wasn't quite as nerdy. She was a more serious FBI agent, but a nice
it's
meta a nice
I'm sorry.
meta thing they did was like she referenced some of their cases that she'd read. Yeah, that was for fans of the show, but it was nice to see that they referenced a lot of things. Father Joe brings up Samantha. Um, he can tell that Mulder's lost somebody, his sister, and that she's dead. So nice to remind people of that in case you didn't stick around long enough to find out what happened to Samantha. Yeah, she's dead. We'll just remind you of that, and
Or,
yeah, a few of our favorite cases. And they weren't just X-File cases; they were cases that pertained to psychics.
mhm.
They mentioned
Oh,
the Peter
Clive.
Boyle case.
Yeah, they mentioned the Clive case. Yep, because
Yes.
worked with psychics before, and Mulder was like, "Well, a lot of them were charlatans and blah blah." But there was this case. So yeah, that was a good callback to that episode. And I thought that there was a little thing going between them, Dakota and Mulder. Like I got the fan thing, but I think well, Mulder's into these hot
Mo-
girls anyway.
yeah, Mulder has that effect on women in
Yes,
general.
so I kind of saw a little bit of chemistry going in. Carter again trying to match Mulder up with somebody else, but Scully's there. Just that this time Scully wasn't. It wasn't like what's her name, Bambi.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Bambi. She was
yeah, she's got,
next flight
she's got,
over.
she's dealing with some shit though, and
Yeah,
she's like pretty much at her wits' end with Mulder anyway.
I know. Different time, different time. See, if it was Bambi, she would have been on. She was on the next flight over. The whole episode,
Yeah,
just phoning it in, literally phoning it in. And then when she hears that name, boom! I think my services would be better here in person. Such a great
yes.
episode, man, with the cockroaches. But anyway,
So yeah, then we get into the nitty gritty. Mulder pays Scully a visit at the hospital. Tells her the FBI agent they're looking for is dead because they found her head in a box. At very much Alice Seven there, and yeah, Dakota's dead too, and she tells him that actually Father Joe happens to be in the hospital because he has cancer and he's dying. So they go to see him, and he tells them that he had a vision of a man speaking a foreign language. Scully shows him the picture of the husband, and he doesn't actually recognize the guy. Oh, no, he recognizes him from his vision, but he says he doesn't know him. And then Scully explains the relationship. And this is where Father Joe gets the epiphany. I've been having these visions to help you catch him to atone for my former crimes. So Scully gives him a test, and she asks, is the agent still alive? And he says, yes, she is. At which point, Scully gives up. She throws her hands in the air. She's like, fraud, fraud, and walks out. And Mulder, by the way, at this point, he's pretty much off the case because he was brought in to verify the veracity of Father Joe, and they've concluded that no, he's not psychic. We've got the case cracked. We know who the bad guys are. So thanks, Mulder. We'll take it from here because he's not an FBI agent. He's just like he's an advisor. So he's off the
yes.
case. But Mulder being Mulder, getting fired from the FBI didn't stop him from messing around in FBI shit for another two whole seasons on the X Files. So that's not going to stop him. So he's
Yep. Yep.
investigating. Yeah. So he's still determined to figure this shit out. So he is investigating the animal tranquilizer aspect, and he goes to a nearby feed store where where they sell that particular brand of animal tranquilizer. And as it happens, the truck driver is dropping in at the same time to fill his prescription. So Mulder ducks out and decides to follow the guy, but he runs him off the road.
That's
Now,
a twofer.
sorry?
It's a twofer. Dude's good at running people off the road. That's like
Yeah,
his
yeah. Well, that's his MO, I guess.
It's a special movie, yes. By the way, where does this movie take place, Pete? It's in West
I think
Virginia?
it's in Virginia.
Yeah,
It
West
was
Virginia.
it was
Oh,
actually filmed in British Columbia, but
yes.
it's supposed to take place in Virginia.
Which, by the way, is another callback because they go back to
Yeah,
where.
back to BC.
Yeah, but I think here it says it's in West Virginia. That's why it's so quick for. Because, the priest gets sick, and I'm like, how the hell is he going to go to Scully's hospital? But yeah, West Virginia is not that far if you're going to DC. Because she's working in DC, right? Scully?
Yes.
Yeah, I heard the Catholic
Yeah.
hospitals in
Not as
DC.
far away as Antarctica.
Yes, no, because for a minute I was like, how the hell did this dude end up in Scully's hospital? But definitely not as far as Antarctica.
Yes. So at the same time this is happening, this is where the stem cell research thing actually comes into play. Scully's doing some research on stem cell research, and she comes across some articles on transplant research being done in Russia, where they're doing like weird things like grafting organs of dogs and to other dogs, and like basically making freak monsters with transplant experiments. And she gets the epiphany that that's what the bad guys are doing. They're building Frankenstein monsters and shit, and that's why
Mm,
Father Joe might possibly sense that the FBI agent is still alive. She's missing her head, but it's possible her heart is still beating somewhere.
yes.
So she calls Mulder to tell him this, but she can't reach him. And then she phones the FBI asking for help, and Drummy answers the phone. He's a total dick. He's like, "Well, you don't work for us no more. Sounds like you should just call the regular police." Which, of course, leads her to calling in the big favor at the FBI.
Mm-hmm. The ace. We were missing the guy.
Yes, yes, she needs some clout. Who you gonna call? She calls the Skin Man. So
Yes.
yes, yay! Applause in the theater. We get Skinner. Because so far it's just been these two, but you want to see some Skin Man.
Of course,
So
and he looks good.
he does. He looks in good shape. He was actually in the Dallas reboot shortly after this, and yeah, he didn't look like he'd aged more than a few years. So they use the cell phone signal to triangulate Mulder's location, but he's gone. He survived. I have to say, Mr. Snowplow driver here, what's his name, Dashin? He was pretty sloppy. At least when he was like kidnapping and murdering women, like he kidnapped them and murdered them. But Mulder, he just kind of runs off the road and was like, yeah, good enough. But
Mm,
maybe he doesn't know who he is. Maybe he's just being paranoid. But nope, Mulder is on the case. So he follows the trail. The sound of barking dogs is what does it, because Father Joe always mentions in his visions that he hears the sound of barking dogs, and Mulder hears the sound of barking dogs, which leads him to the compound. Uh, Kills one of the dogs, but it's worth noting one of the dogs has two heads too, so that's kind of creepy and gross.
oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, they got a two-headed dog in there. So he raids the compound where we find out what's really going on. It's not just illegal organ harvesting, which I imagine they're doing on the side, but the main raison d'etre for this is that the husband is all kinds of fucked up, and they're using different body parts to keep him alive using this experimental Russian surgery.
Mm.
And this woman that they took from the swimming pool, they're about to do something really fucked up and cut off her head and put the husband's head on his body, making like some kind of bizarro Frankenwoman creature. Uh, I really want to know how Dashin like gets. He must be paying these doctors really well, because, to be honest, like your ethics have got to be pretty far in the gutter to be. You have to have medical skill, first of all, high level of medical skill, and absolutely no sense of ethics to be doing this. And yet he's like a comic book villain. He's got this whole team of doctors who are just totally willing to go along with this.
Yes. Well, that's very
Yeah.
ish.
Yes. So that's what they're gonna do, but there's too many of them really. Mulder's like all alone. He doesn't have a gun even. He's armed with a crowbar, I think. And Dashin gets the drop on him and injects him with something to knock him out. So Mulder's pretty fucked, except we know that Skinner and Scully are going to be along shortly to the rescue. Um, So yeah, basically, this is the climax that it comes down to. Dashin's gonna kill Mulder, and possibly harvest his organs at some point in the future. But Skinner and Scully make their way there and basically save the day. I believe Dashin gets shot, and they manage to save the life of the woman who was abducted from the pool. Um,
It's a pretty awesome fight, though.
yes, yes. Mostly Skinner though,
Oh, no,
and Scully.
Skinner's a good.
Yeah, Scully's in on it because
Hey, let
I
me see.
believe
Look, it says here.
Dashin's about to hit him with an axe, and then
Mm-hmm.
Scully attacks him,
Yep.
and she takes him out.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Skinner's in the lab holding everyone at gunpoint. The woman's like already half beheaded. They've already started cutting into her. Yeah, I don't actually recall what happens to Dashin. I think he gets shot. I think
What says here? Let me see. Scully attacks him in an ensuing confrontation,
incapacitates.
incapacitating him, while Skinner breaks up the medical procedure before the young man is beheaded. Later, Mulder is home. So he's just
Yeah,
incapacitated.
I think. Yeah, I
I don't-
think actually he lives because Mulder's the one with the gun. Scully doesn't have a gun. She just like bushwhacks Dashin,
Let me see if it
beats him
says
up.
something here in the if there's anything in the wiki page, because I was reading that off of Wikipedia. It's very short, but here it says, okay, the dude had a psychic connection. We saw that part already. Um,
And I think that's the last we see of him. He gets taken out. I think he gets arrested. He doesn't die. So they take everyone into custody, and everyone lives happily ever after.
yeah, it
Although,
says here she renders him unconscious.
yeah,
When she suddenly appears behind him and strikes him once with a piece of wood.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I think that's about it.
well,
So
yeah.
then we get the epilogue. We get the epilogue here. Father Joe has died. Oh, we get the old Mulder speech about they screwed us again, right? Because there's a newspaper article about it, and they don't say anything about Father Joe and his contribution to it. I think Mulder's really nitpicking at this point, and Scully kind of says as much. She's like, he was a defrocked
F,
priest who molested kids. Like, if they gave him credit, like who would fucking care? People would be glad that he's dead. And that's the other thing. Father Joe is dead. And
yes.
Mulder draws a theory from this,
Oh,
which is
God.
reaching because they disconnected the husband's life support uh, back at the compound, and Mulder is convinced that if you check the time of death for Father Joe and the husband, it would be the same thing. And this is a leap. He's like, that's proof that they had a psychic connection. It's like, for fuck's sake, Mulder, you're a law enforcement officer. That's not proof. That's conjecture. That's coincidence. Okay, as X Files fans, we're willing to ride with it, but from an actual legal or scientific standpoint, that's not proof. But Mulder is
Yes.
content. The theme
That's
is I want to believe, he wanted to believe, and as far as he's concerned, he's had his vindication that his belief was well founded.
Yes, he got his faith back a little bit. Yeah, the newspaper headline is FBI arrests modern day Frankenstein monster. Um, but Scully, this whole scene, she's just kind of tearing him down. Like Scully is like, man, the FBI don't care whether you can prove this connection or not. And she believed that Father Joe was a conduit for God and to have acted on Joe's advice not to give up, contributing it to Mulder's successful rescue, but also to hardships Christian had faced due to the stem cell research. Uh, so then they go into this long thing about whether Father Joe's forgiven or not. Like, I don't care. I mean,
Yeah,
if he's forgiven or not. I mean, he was a weird, interesting character, but I don't care enough if like this dude that molested a bunch of kids is
Yeah.
forgiven by God. But Mulder considers the possibility that Father Joe was forgiven because he didn't give up. But Scully challenges him to prove that theory. And there you go. Sorry.
Yes.
But then she leaves, and Mulder's still on it, and he's like, "Why do you think that Father Joe told you not to give up?" Thinking that
Right.
maybe his advice might be the larger answer. And Scully's like, "Look, don't make shit harder for me than it already is, okay?"
Right.
Uh, and if she has any doubts about this surgery that she still hasn't done, she should cancel it. They should just leave
Right.
together and blah blah blah. But um, well, that gets to the end there. So you want to finish up?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, we get a nice little coda here. Um, she goes through with the surgery. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure how she was able to do this because I think when the parents say no, you're supposed to not do it. But she goes ahead and does it
No, but
anyway.
didn't she change their minds?
I don't recall, but I guess she must have, or she wouldn't be
Yeah,
doing the
because she kind
surgery.
of pleaded to them. It's like because at first she thought it was his father, Yoruba, whatever his name is. That
Right,
she asked him, "Did he talk to you guys about this?" And she gets really pissed. And he claims that no, he didn't say anything. And then she really pleads, and she's like, "But what if it does work? What if it does work?" So I think they changed their mind because you're right. I don't think the doctor can override.
yes,
I'll look this
yeah.
up. You're going, finishing up.
Yes. So she goes through with the surgery. Basically, her colleagues, all Catholics, hate her guts. They give her all dirty looks, but she goes in, head held high, confidently, gives her buddy a little smile, and goes through with the surgery. And there is a reconciliation between Scully and Mulder as well. Basically, Mulder got through his shit. This is Scully's shit to get through.
Mm-hmm.
And their deal is like, okay, man, if this works out, we're just going to take off and get as far away from the darkness as possible. And that's what they do. The final scene is them riding off into the ocean. Nice after all the white. This was a really weird scene because like this whole movie is just snow, 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 and then we get this nice big blue motif of the two of them in a motorboat sailing towards an island somewhere in the Caribbean or Mediterranean, maybe. But there you go, folks. For those of you who were dissatisfied with the ending that they got at the end of season 9, there it is for you. Mulder and Scully get away from it all, live happily ever after, sipping margaritas on the beach in the tropical paradise of your choice. The end.
The end until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Helicopter coming. By the way, I looked back on the wiki page of that scene, and now I kind of remember it. What it is, she talks to the parents, and they do say that they talked to the father, but they made the decision on their own that they're going to trust God. And they're about to walk away, and Scully's like, "I just don't want to give up. What if it works? What if this works? What do you have to lose?"
Right,
And
right. I remember now. Yeah.
yeah, and then the scene kind of like there's no response, but you can kind of see in their faces that they're like, "Yeah,
Right.
maybe we'll consider it." So I guess they reconsidered their decision and let her continue with the surgery because they're really the only ones that could do that because the hospital, they were overriding her too. So if the hospital said,
Mm-hmm.
"Look, we're having this surgery," then she couldn't do it even. I mean, unless the parents said yes. So
Yeah.
I think that's that. So your thoughts on this movie as a whole, Pete?
I really liked it. Like I said, it caught me by surprise. I found it in a DVD bin. I'd heard nothing about it, so I was just stoked to see some new X Files. Um, I kind of liked that it wasn't all mythology related because, I mean, it's basically just, it's an end cap to the series, really, right? So you don't really need mythology for that. I
Hmm.
like that it was just them doing FBI shit, and there was like a little bit of supernatural elements in it. Visually, I loved it. It was very desolate, very, very, very white. Like all these shots of just nothing but white, and some of these long shots where you had like people in them, but they looked like little ants, moving across this big white landscape. So the visual aesthetics were really nice. I love the Mulder and Scully chemistry, the development of the relationship, the fact that they did get this closure, and the fact that you found out, hey, they've more or less been doing all right in the last 6 years. They've
Yes.
been together. Like Mulder's kind of wasting away. He's not exactly living a productive life, but at least Scully is, and Mulder's getting laid. So I mean, he's got that. Um, the Scully subplot with the stem cell kid, I mean, that really, I think it was more of a distraction than anything else. I would have preferred to see those two working together.
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't a big fan of the villains, like the whole organ transplant and Frankenstein monster shit. Like that stuff was creepy and icky, but the main bad guy, he's not really that threatening. Like we know he's kind of an evil guy, but he doesn't really have much dialogue. He doesn't seem to be that tough. I mean, the main reason he gets the drop on Dakota is basically fluke, and she's about to shoot him. You get the impression that he pushed her in
Yes.
self defense, right? Because she's standing there with the gun point blank at his stomach. So he just kind of pushes her, like, I don't know, like pushing women off a 20-story scaffolding doesn't make you a badass. So he's not intimidating. We don't know
No,
anything about him as a person. So I felt as a villain he was pretty flat, not the best.
I'm with you.
But
He's like
yeah,
he for not for X File standards, like he's just a regular serial killer. Like he's Ted Bundy, but like for X File standards, it's just like okay, it's just another serial killer. Like X Files serial killers or killers in general have a tendency to be way creepier and leave more of an impression. This guy was just really good at running people off the road. I'll give him credit for that.
yeah,
Trained hard for that,
yeah,
and in a snowplow. Uh, but other than that, it took me a while to even like they don't establish that he's the main villain very well because it takes all the way to the end for you to get that okay, he's not just a henchman, he's actually the villain. Uh, and you know, it's not really like he doesn't have enough gravitas. There's not enough to get you to that point where you're like, oh shit, he is the villain. And then, like Pete said, he's really stupid for not checking if Mulder was dead. And then instead of killing him the second time, he injects him with something, which takes forever for him to axe him. He could have just tied his ass up and then axed him.
yeah.
Uh, and he gets beat with a piece of wood to the head. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So he was a weak point. The lack of Mulder Scully teaming up. I mean, they had lots of great moments, but they were all like talking about their relationship kind of moments. We didn't get to see the dynamic duo in action as detectives, which I think is kind of what people were hoping for. And yeah, the Scully's. I mean, I like that Scully's doing her own thing. That she got to live this dream because she's often complaining in the series. Oh, I gave up being a doctor to chase little green men. Blah blah blah. So hey, she got to do both. She got to heal people and she got to chase little green men. She got the best of both worlds.
yes.
But yeah, mostly for being a very nice epilogue to the series. Um, necessary, I think, for a lot of fans. Like, I mean, I didn't hate the series finale, but it felt like it could have used a bit more. Not so much more because I mean, there was closure. It's like, okay, the series ends with Mulder and Scully basically on the run, and they kind of deserve better. I think it's not the lack of closure; it's just that the characters deserve better. So this is better. Mulder's not a fugitive anymore. Scully's a doctor, and they can be together and like take vacations in the Caribbean. Yay!
I agree. Um, before we move on, Sarah Calloway Shaver said, I wanted to like it so bad. Even went twice. The Easter egg nods to the fans were sweet, but the story was too confusing and too much going on. And Carol Mincy says, I liked it for Mulder and Scully when it premiered. I like it much more now. So, split vote there when it comes to this movie. And for me, I just totally skipped it. Like, I had no interest in seeing this when it came out. And I only watched it for the first time when I did the rewatch leading up to season 10 some years back. And you know what? I didn't mind it. And then I saw it again this time for our rewatch. And I didn't mind it even less. Actually, kind of
I
decent.
liked it
And
more than when I saw it first time.
yeah, I
Actually,
kind of liked
yeah.
it more. And I think it's a bit of because we got more after.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and also a separation from the expectation that the fans had that this was going to be a continuation of the mythology arc and we were going to get more of
Yeah.
that, and
I
then
don't
you're
think there's any way they could have done that though, and have it be particularly good.
well, I'll tell you what, Chris Carter said in a bunch of interviews at the time that he was willing to and wanted to make a third X-Files movie that was going to go back to the TV series mythology. So he almost wanted to do like a bookend type of thing and make it almost like the TV show Mythos, Monster of the Week Mythos. And he would focus on the alien invasion and colonization of Earth that was foretold in the series finale. And a lot of people were like, okay, because 2012 was when that was supposedly going to go down in the TV show timeline. So it would have been interesting. I think they could have done something cool. Again, if he tied it all up. I mean, if it was just more mythology that ends with, oh, they got us again, or oh, we just missed the boat that blew up that had the important evidence inside, then I would be like, oh, come on, guys. But if you tied it up nicely and gave it an ending similar to this, it would have been kind of cool. Um, so yeah, but I think that separation is what make this movie a bit more interesting to watch as a standalone because that expectation's gone. Because Chris Carter, even with season 10 and 11, he just was like, man, we've moved on from this alien invasion timeline or switched it enough that it's not what we had from the TV show. So when you slip it in, you don't feel so much of that like, come on, man, we wanted this clearly and you gave us something else. So I give it, so I give Carter credit for trying to do something different with
Mm-hmm.
this movie, and really making it broad. The X Files is not just a mythology, it's also them chasing a quote unquote monster of the week, in which this case was the pedophile priest. Um, and even that part, which for me, like, first time I watched it, I just went and, I didn't read much about it before I said, let me just watch this and see. And then I had to pause the movie and be like, seriously, this is a pedophile priest? And then I had to read up and be like, what was the whole development of that? Kind of a weird person to put in there. I get that it's a plot point later on because he has a connection to the guy that's trying to get a new body. But it just seems like, I don't know, like, why would they even
Yeah.
broach that as a theme for the for this movie? I don't know. kind of weird. And much like Pete, guys, my main issue with the movie is that they separate Mulder and Scully. I like the whole thing with Scully working in a hospital, and I keep beating this dead horse about reading the season 10 comics or listen to the audiobook, which is on YouTube. But it's cool because of what they do. They start out same way as this, as Scully's working in a hospital, but they kill that within the first issue. It's like, okay, she's working in a hospital, but she's an FBI agent. Mulder talks her back into putting that suit on. And in the next issues of the X Files season 10 comic is Mulder and Scully, with their flashlights and
Right.
guns and doing FBI work. So I think that would have elevated this movie a little bit more because, as Pete pointed out in his synopsis, those were some really good scenes when they were together. I mean, as they always are. It's so you can have them like reading alphabet soup to each other, and it would be a good scene. They just have that chemistry, one with the other. So that was a weak point because great to establish that she's doing something else like they did in the comics, and then drop it, not carry a whole movie. And I think uh, you know that's just one of the biggest mistakes of the movie, because although Pete said it does end up being important to the plot and the character development and Scully having to get to that point where she's confident enough to do the surgery, but who cares? Like, I mean, I care about Scully, the FBI agent, not Scully, the medical doctor. Like,
Right.
or she's always been a medical doctor, but working in a Catholic hospital. Like, I don't care that she's gonna have the character development by the end of this to affirm that she is this doctor in this
Right.
church. Like, that's not the Scully that I'm interested in. And I think it probably turned some people off with that. What else? Like Pete said, the cinematography is beautiful. That opening scene is super well filmed. That's not just in an X Files movie, just a movie in general. I mean, that's a great opening. I think it does have a bit too much Silence of the Lambs in it, for my taste. Of course, we all know, us X Files fans, that Carter was heavily influenced by that movie, even with the creation of the Dana Scully character. But there's influence, and then there's like just jerking off over the movie because it's like, wow, he put so many elements in here. Uh, from we don't have a cannibal, but what's worse than a cannibal? A pedophile. So how about a pedophile that can help us try to catch the mysterious body snatchers who lock a young girl up in a cage, not a well, but a cage, and put the lotion on. They just missed that part.
Yeah.
Surgery. Put this lotion on before surgery. So a little bit too much Silence of the Lambs for my taste, but a solid movie. It's one. It's like, for me, it's like an episode. It's how I feel about Star Trek Insurrection. A lot of people
Hmm.
complain, oh, it feels like a season 8 long episode. Well, yeah, but it's not a bad episode. Maybe it's not as cinematic as First Contact, but it's fun. It's okay. It's a 2-hour episode. So what? So I look at this movie just like a good hour long and a half, or whatever, hour 40-minute episode of the X Files, and worth checking out, going back and seeing Mulder and Scully sort of in action. Although she does come in to save the day, which is another callback, I guess, right, Pete? Because
Yeah.
Mulder always tends to do dumb shit and break into
Yeah.
shit unprepared, and Scully comes in with her Scully foo and just saves the day, saved his ass again. And good to see Skinner. Now, I will say this, man. Uh, Good Lord. I mean, this is 2008, so I get it. Different time, but wow, I really doubt this movie would not get roasted by the ultra PC crowd of today, because you got the two villains of the movie are gay men, and
Hmm.
uh, I don't think there's been one positive gay. Oh no, the maybe the ex cops ones. There's that gay couple where they don't really they're not bad guys, but I don't think there's any depiction of gay characters in the X Files who are just regular old people. Uh, some folks even complain about that season one episode with the Amish, the body shifting one.
Right.
So it was just a different time to make the evil guy's gay and sort of like a transsexual thing going on because he wants to put his body on a woman's body. So you don't know
Yeah.
if there's this whole other level of that of like, oh, I want to become a woman.
Yeah,
Um,
because they are exclusively kidnapping women.
yes, so I don't know if there's a weird thing there. And I recall. I mean, if you even go back to Silence of the Lambs, with the mangina and the whole
Mm,
transsexual aspects of it. There was a time, long time ago, where yeah, it was still kind of queer, as they say. It was weird, if you're gay or you're transvestite or something, it's kind of that dark side. So it would be interesting to make these characters either bad guys or kind of gray area, and that stuff wouldn't fly today at all. But I judged the movie by the time that it was made, and that what else can you do? Now, overall, though, Pete, not a bad one. If you're an X Files fan, definitely worth the watch. I know a lot of folks skip it. Going back, Pete had said at the beginning of the podcast that the movie made some money back, and it did. Because it was only it was a $30 million budget, and it made 69 million worldwide. Domestically, though, what didn't do too well, $20 million, but it made a lot of money internationally, $1,380. Now, the cast does say that one thing that hurt the movie is that it came out like a week after Batman: The Dark Knight,
right.
which was a $1 billion making movie. Um, but I don't know. I think it was just timing. Timing not because of Batman: The Dark Knight, but it'd been a while since the series was off the air. It kind of, uh, uh, slowly died, on its way off the air. So I don't think there was this big attraction for the X Files. There was enough
No.
for to make this amount of money. Imagine 20 million people paid $10. That's about right. It's what the X Files movie made, which is like a TV audience.
Yeah.
And we've spoken about this before, guys. That it's going from a TV to movie isn't it's tough. I mean, because you got to capture that larger audience. Sometimes folks complain about the Star Trek movies. By the way, our Star Trek ranking is back up. It's a little
Yep.
bit drunk at the beginning, and I was trying to edit out the drunk parts, and I was like, you know what, the drunk parts are the best parts. So you get a little bit of that. I put it back up. It was unlisted for the longest time. So check out our Star Trek movie rankings. But folks complain a little bit about the Star Trek movies because it's too much action, too much this. Dude, you got to capture a wider audience. You can't just capture the TV nerds that will watch an hour of a Star Trek episode that's 90% dialogue and try to figure out the ethics of killing like some space amoeba. You know,
Right.
got to put some action in there and got to make it more interesting. This movie doesn't. I think this movie, if you're an X Files fan, you're a fan of the show, I think it works. It's an episode. If you're looking at it from a wider scope, I mean, it kind of does work, Pete, as far as just a regular old, catching a killer movie. But
Yeah,
I think,
Roger Ebert gave it a really good
oh,
review, I think.
okay.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't have a connection to Mulder and Scully, it's gonna fall flat because of that. Like if it were any other agents, or if it was just some other, just an independent movie about a pedo priest trying to help two FBI agents catch some body snatchers, I think that it would have been, just a sleeper hit, as they call, or a cult hit. Somebody in the comments here, hello, Carol. Oh, Carol, I just gave you a shout out in the Facebook group. So Carol is from one of the X Files Facebook groups. She had commented in there, but now she's with us here, and she said I needed to see more drama between Scully and the agent that brought them. Carol, I was telling Pete the same thing because Pete was right to say that she was kind of like a fangirl, but I felt a little bit of like sexual tension. Mulder and this young girl, like she was looking up to him, and Mulder's all about the young, hot ladies. And Scully was kind of standing there, like with that look on her face that she always gets. Um, so I don't think it even took her that much to, get her off the case. She's like, "Oh, I don't need to see this." So I agree with you. It would have been nice if there were a little bit more tension, but that's what I feel is the movie's biggest mistake, and I think Pete agrees with me, is that they separate Scully and Mulder through the whole movie, and that's like the heart of the whole thing. X Files, Scolder and Mully, Scolder,
Yes.
Scolder. Guys, I took a little bit of a sleeping med, so I'm a little bit off. Pete knows the sleeping med I took. Mulder and Scully, they got to be together. You can't have the X Files with just one. They've tried. Um, so, any more you want to say about this, Peter?
No, not really. I think we've covered it all. We got the story, we got the review, we got the box office. I think that's pretty much it.
The agent didn't bring it. Jillian was ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Scully's ready for a cat fight any time of the day. She acts like she's not in love. Somebody in the X Files group, Pete, had asked, okay, we have Mulder and kissing. Mulder and Scully eventually do kiss in no, what's that show? That episode, Small Potatoes. Even though it's like the guy shapeshifted into Mulder,
Yeah.
but goes to her house and it shows that she's clearly willing to kiss Mulder. So somebody asked, when do you think Scully first realized that she was willing to kiss Mulder? And the best answer, episode 1.
Yeah. And he's looking
Right.
at her butt.
Right in the pilot. She's just like, take me, take me. But she keeps it professional. But as Carol said, she's ready for it. Just say Bambi. Say Bambi's here. She'll be on the next flight over. She'll be like, the kid, it's in God's hand. I'll be back.
Yeah.
He'll take over this surgery. Um, so yes, missing that drama. But Carol, I think the consensus here is, although it's missing some elements, it's a decent movie. It's a decent movie. Folks, next week we will be looking at season 10 of the X Files.
Yeah. All of it. Might as well.
All
It's
of
only
it.
six
Yeah, 'cause it's
episodes.
six
Yeah.
episodes, five.
Six.
Six. I think season 10 is a little bit longer, so maybe we'll cut that one in two. But so tune in for that. And if you like sci-fi and other, things of that nature, we will be checking out Deep Space Nine and doing a retro review of that. Pete has already started watching it. And I might as well start watching it, even though we won't get started till a little bit late next month. So thank you guys.
They're
Yes,
long seasons, so
yes, and Carol does say yes. It's a decent film. Yes, it's a decent film. And thank you everybody who watches. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and thank you to the administrators who let us post in the X Files groups. Now I got to find Star Trek groups that will let us post, which is a little bit more of a bigger mountain to climb. Um, but that's it, folks. Thank you, Carol, for dropping in. Thank you, everybody. We are out of here. Good night.
all right. Thanks for listening.